So, Robert, what do you think about the affordability issues we're facing here in the city of Toronto?
Okay, well, this is the key word, affordability. If affordability means the monthly payment that is between 30 and 40% of the gross income of a family, that is the amount that they have to pay in order to after they put their down payment on to buy a house at the average price, then that is what affordability means. However, that is unattainable, which is another word that the federal government, the Ontario government is using at this time. The price of houses at $1 million average and interest rates that was driven up to that level at 2% and now being financed at 5%, 7% cannot become affordable without the average income of the people who live in the territory doubling.
So, what if
It's not going to happen.
a major financial institution says that even if a recession were to happen, the worst recession were to happen, affordability could not be improved? What would you say about that?
Well, again, we're juggling three things. You got the wage, you got the interest rate, and you got the price. And you cannot make the wages go up double. You can't make interest rates go down to half, and you can't make prices go to half. So how do you solve the problem?
All right, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Real Estate Chat with
John Perez
and Robert E. Make sure you click on subscribe and make sure you tell us by the end of this video if you like it or dislike it. But we're going to share this Desjardins report that Robert has shared with me. And it's, I guess, juicily titled, How Low Can Prices Go in TO? Even a severe recession likely won't make housing affordable in Toronto. We're going to put a link of this in our show description, so make sure you click on it and read it yourself. But basically, this report goes through a couple of different scenarios. Mid-range scenario, the most extreme scenario, scenarios involving various factors that affect whether it's the economy, whether it's growth, whether it's the availability of listings, when we say growth, population growth. And so you've seen charts like this before because Robert has put something like this together, but here it is. In this first graph, they talk about even a severe recession in Ontario might not restore housing affordability to historic norms. And they're looking at basically prices, right? So here's average Toronto region home resale price as a multiple of disposable income. So this one, they're particularly using disposable income as a base to compare various scenarios. In another graph, again, you can look at this in detail when you click on the link. They look at the unaffordability index of where Toronto is compared to, let's say, overall Canada, overall France, Germany. Interesting that they use it as, compared a city to the entire country. And here's Vancouver, interestingly, lagging now behind Toronto in terms of unaffordability. And we're looking at basically weak housing inventories in Toronto to start off 2023. So citing the supply side of the equation, despite a lot of demand, is what's pushing the prices up. Now, one thing that we're going to be talking about here as well is this one here. Looking at the average price of where Q1 2022 peak is, you all remember when this happened, 1.28 million is the price that they're using here. And refer to Robert's charts several episodes ago when we analyzed this, and refer to this chart. We're looking at the base case. What would happen if weak listings and a strong population growth happen? Where would prices end up by 2026, 2027, I guess? The average recession were to happen, where prices would be. And in the worst case, a 1990 style recession amid strong construction, we're looking at a dip even below 9, below 8. We're looking at 750s. Robert, you talked about in the intro a couple of other factors that some were mentioned here, some weren't mentioned here as well. But first, let's start with, why is affordability such an important issue to talk about?
Well, it's monthly payments. Everything is monthly payments. That if you have to pay $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment downtown, if you have to pay $3,000 for a 3-bedroom townhouse in Scarborough or Etobicoke or North York, if you have to pay $4,000 for a half-decent house somewhere, then not everybody can pay $4,000 a month for a house. Now that sometimes they have to. If they've got half down and they got two big incomes, then they can pay $4,000 a month to run their house. And I think that's what we came up with as the magic numbers. That's what people will pay. That based on whether you got 2% interest or 7% interest, that $4,000 translates to a mortgage amount plus the amount of cash that they have. And that's the price. So everybody is talking about affordability, and they're trying to solve it with a volume of units that they're going to build. Now, they don't talk about, are they going to build condominiums? Are they going to build rentals? Are they going to build some kind of somethings on a 50 by 110 foot lot, which nobody wants? The zoning does not permit. Ontario going to override it. Canada's going to override it. They're all just running for election and saying things that they think people want to hear. What you have to do is really look hard at this green belt, which we talked about a while ago as a way to contain sprawl. So if there's a heritage or an environmental reason why you want to preserve those headlands, okay. The sprawl, you're going to have people come to the main center of Toronto. So what we have to do is have, I call it a Brasilia. In Brazil, they decided they're going to create a new capital city. They called it Brasilia, and they did it way out in the middle of the bush. It was going to be the absolute quintessence of Brazil, and they did it from nothing. There was nothing there, and they started it up. What we need is a new Brasilia to the northwest and to the northeast, because you can't go straight north of Toronto. It's already been done up Yonge Street, and create new cities out there, like bigger than Brampton, bigger than Kingston, up nowhere. You don't have to go to the Keep Center every week if you live there. You just have to have cheap land in order to build regular houses.
So let's look at this way, because I forgot the name of the project, but when I find that information, we'll bring it up in a future episode of Real Estate Chat. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. But they do have this plan to build something, I believe it is north of here, way north of here. And basically there's going to be a GO station. There's going to be a center hub, high density condos, all that sort of stuff. And then it's going to radiate outwards. It's literally like a circular pattern. It's going to radiate outwards. And so they're building that up. But let's say they built this Toronto-zilia, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Isn't there still an allure for someone to want to live in Toronto? Let's say, for example, I work for one of the major financial institutions or one of the major accounting firms or tech firms or whatever. Wouldn't I still be allured to live in a downtown Toronto condo versus taking an hour and a half, 1 hour, maybe even 2 hour go to this Toronto-zilia that they're going to be building out? Isn't that what's driving it? It's just there's just so much demand but not enough supply. I mean, that's the basics of it. But what would get people to say, hey, I'm okay living that far out from Toronto because it's affordable?
Work from home. Everybody prefers that. Nobody wants to be on the GO train for 2 hours to come down. Like, we have all these office buildings downtown that are empty. They're afraid to say, okay, we're going to turn those all into homeless shelters. We're going to turn those all into rental buildings. But the developer who owns that and says, nobody's here. The bank doesn't want to pay rent. Now, the bank can pay rent because they can just make money. But there's a huge, big transformation because there are unintended consequences of the lockdown craziness that we went through for 3 years. People now, their whole life changed. They're not coming back. If you're an executive, yeah, you want to live in Rosedale. If you're a super guy, you want to live on Post Road. But if you're a regular guy that's making $72,000 a year and your wife's making $82,000 a year, maybe you have to commute to the hospital. But if you're making $400,000, if you're making $1 million a year, you're going to live in Toronto. If you're not, you're going to work from home remotely.
Well,
you want a backyard.
Okay, here's the irony, though. So Zoom, which we use to record these videos, even Zoom told its employees, hey, come back to the office. And some companies are saying, come back to the office or you're fired. I don't know how legal or illegal that is. But Robert, so I do see your point, because during the pandemic, even my role, first it was completely from home. You had to take phone calls and handle all of our agent inquiries on phone, online, or chat, which was efficient. But I've flipped ever since to I'm at the office practically every single day of the week, right? So there will still be jobs, Robert. I don't know if you agree or disagree. And in your Real Estate Chat viewers, if you're in a position where You know, some of you work from home 100%. Some of you work from home and come into the office 2 to 3 days a week. Some of you have to be at the office. There's certainly jobs that can be done completely from home, but you know, going back to there's a whole bunch of stuff in this discussion. Going back to an episode we talked about schools and housing prices. You know,
Just
physical labor.
we're talking about affordability. How are you going to find a way to produce affordable houses? I just told you how. Now you're telling me about how you're going to reorder society. We're not talking about that. We're talking about affordability. Now,
Well, that's what. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say.
If you want to talk about something else, if you want to talk about, we're going to transform Rosedale into Brampton. See if you get that passed. Okay. You want to transform Scarborough into Welfare Hotel City. Well, it's already happening. But anywhere that's good doesn't want to turn into, as you know, a bumhole country. And the quality of your zoning, you know, they're saying bad things about detached, freehold, space apart, detached homes. Why are they saying? Because you could put 9 condos, or you could put 9 high rises on. But people aren't thinking properly. If you want to live in a detached house, you buy a neighborhood and you pay the price to get those components. If someone comes along and says, we're going to change your Rosedale into a Regent Park, you're going to move. And you're going to go far away to where you can get what you want. You'll go.
Okay, so let's say in your world this happens, Robert, and let's say that it happens in this world. Why not? What, like, if such a thing were to happen and all of a sudden demand picks up for Toronto Zillia, wouldn't that then start to raise their prices? And wouldn't this become a perpetual cycle? Isn't that why?
Yeah, but what you're trying to do is create, right now the price out in Brasilia is 200,000 because the land costs nothing. You got to zone it. You got to build a city. You got to have everything out there, but you don't need to have a GO train to it. People are going to live there. They're going to live there, and they're going to internet to work.
So
they're going to be away from all the city problems. Many people don't like the city problems.
You're saying create hubs that.
No, it's not connect. It's not a hub. It's a new center. It's a new place to live. Away from a lot of people don't like the big city. I used to love the big city, but I don't like the big city. There's too many damn people around. People who don't live the same way that I don't think the same way, and don't even think about the law in the same way that I do.
Okay, so you said work from home is one way to encourage.
That's why you don't need a downtown. You don't need a downtown for everybody.
Now, do we know who? Like, let's say, for example, I'm an immigrant from another country.
Doesn't matter.
All I know is
socioeconomic. It's what are your needs for a school? Do you have children? What do you need for a job? Do you want to work in a factory? Do you want to work in a remote internet facility because you're a computer engineer? Do you want to work in a factory? It's not about where you're from. It's what your brain is like and your skill set.
How do we get people to that way of thinking? So, for example,
if you build it, they will come. That's it.
I guess it's a matter of seeing if and when that will happen, right? So, Robert, great points. As we've seen in this discussion, a pretty intense one, there's a lot of different solutions being thrown at this. So from this
affordable and number of units, decide which one you're solving, okay? Don't interchange the terms. And that's what all these politicians are doing. If you look at the Olivia Chow came up with, she talked, and somebody else had 12 people with input for her, and they all said, cut red tape, get rid of the taxes. It's too expensive to build. Nobody wants to build rental housing. We can't get the land. Reuse some of your City of Toronto land that's, it's underused. We've talked about schools. All of the City of Toronto buildings, the parks, they can be used in a much more intense way. And instead of intensifying the neighborhoods, let's intensify the already intensive uses.
Too many chefs and too many different variables.
Well, no, it's divided. It's because the responsibility is divided. Nobody's in charge and nobody can force the other one to do it. And so they're trying to get collaboration, but nobody wants to play. Nobody wants to get unelected the next time in their district because they're going to have to put in bad policies that will affect the people who are going to sit there and vote them out.
Okay, well then let's end this off with a realistic question. Is this ever going to happen? Do you think affordability will ever be solved in Toronto?
The green belt is causing intensification because you can't expand Toronto. Now, you're going to have to debate that far and wide. This whole thing about, are we using automobiles and are they causing a pollutant that is negative for the rest of the world? Are they causing heat? Are they causing an increase in the 0.4% carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere? Are we being led down a garden path towards 15-minute cities and this whole depopulation agenda that's being sort of talked about, but not in the mainstream? What is really going on? We don't have a leader in the country to say, this is what we're going to do. The way you've got it set up now with everybody's living in 10 cities is stupid. We're going to make every one of those 10 cities a province, and we're going to start up more places to live in the country.
All right, let us know what you think about this and affordability issues in Toronto and throughout, and real estate in general. Thank you for watching this episode of Real Estate Chat. Stay tuned. We're going to have a follow-up topic on this, I'm sure. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in our next episode. Take care, and bye for now.
See ya.